I worked in dating coaching for a while for women. Very weird. I don't put that on my CV. But
how did that happen? Hold on, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You can't just pass through that. What was that all about? Are you ready? All right. Hi there, I'm Nora Dunn, and I'm otherwise known as the Professional Hobo. And welcome to my series where I speak with ordinary people who have extraordinary remote careers and travel lifestyles. Before I introduce my guest today, I encourage you to check out the description for a link to your free checklist of 10 crucial things you must do before you travel long term. This is guaranteed to get you set up effectively so you can travel stress-free and confidently, knowing that everything is set up in the best possible way for you. Now, my guest today is Jordan Carroll. Jordan has worked 7 years remotely in the US and while traveling internationally. He's worked for a Fortune 50 company, startups, and his own business. He's lived in over 15 countries on 5 continents in the past 3 years, and he's a member of the Forbes Coaches Council. He's now known as the Remote Job Coach, and he creates content, courses, and coaching programs to help high performers learn a process to land legitimate remote jobs and gain freedom and flexibility in their lives. Thousands of remote job seekers have used his methodologies to find success in their search, and I look forward to finding out about some of those methodologies in our chat today. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you, Nora, for having me.
So you've worked remotely in a lot of different ways. You've worked for companies, you've worked for yourself. I'm curious, can you walk us through your progression for how you started working remotely and through to where you are today? And what did that look like?
Yeah, and that's a great observation, because I think that's what puts me in such a unique position to help people with this. Is I've done the corporate thing. That was my first, professional life, was in corporate at IBM, commuting an hour and a half each way, just miserable, to 1 day a week being remote at IBM, negotiating that for just Fridays, and then going fully remote at IBM, and then leaving there to go to a small PR firm. And then I went to go freelance and travel the world. And then I worked for a remote year, and I worked for, a range of different companies, from 2 to 10 people to 300 people to 40,000 people to me. So it's like, when you have that many different perspectives, and they're all different industries, travel industry, tech industry. I worked in dating coaching for a while for women. Very weird. I don't put that on my CV. But
how did that happen? Hold on, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You can't just pass through that. What was that all about?
Well, there was, when I was first decided that I was going to travel the world in 2018 and break up with my girlfriend and leave my apartment behind and do all the existential crisis type stuff. I needed something that could be done remote, and some of the only stuff I could find, I'm a lifelong sales guy. I've always been, classically educated in sales and marketing. The things that were easiest to find were 100% commission jobs, because people didn't want to, pay you a salary, but hey, they'll pay you if you're making enough money. So there was a dating coach. I'm not going to mention her name, and I respect her. I think she was great, and I'm so glad that she gave me the chance and the training and all that. But I ended up working for her as an enrollment coach, which basically you talk to people about their dating problems, specifically middle-aged women who are, have some very traumatic stories. And it gave me so many different perspectives on what women go through in our society, but also gave me a whole set of new skills on how to talk to women and how to appreciate emotions and all these different things. So there are a lot of transferable skills I got from that, but then ultimately I'd be selling them a $9,000 course. And that was very difficult to do. And I went through that for like 3-4 months, because it was fully remote. I was doing it in Lisbon, Portugal, while I was traveling. But it was just such a big grind. It was such a difficult thing. And the pay was very, was tough. If you weren't selling, you weren't making any money. For me, integrity is a really big part of my life. And I can't look myself in the mirror if I don't feel, like I have that integrity. So I kind of had to reassess. I'm like, hey, I'm not getting paid what I'm worth. I believe that there's a lot of value in what's being sold here, but I can't like sell something to people who don't need it. So I'd often just not sell it. And, it's very difficult to make a living.
That's hard when you're on commission, right?
when you're on commission and you're like, I believe in the product, like from a high level perspective, but do I believe that someone can afford this? That's where it gets kind of like, you don't want to tell people that they can't afford something, but when people are like in really desperate financial spots and you're selling them something of that caliber, it's like, It's tough.
So you went from, you basically, you did a very interesting transition from working for IBM as one employer to then starting to do some freelance stuff and utilizing your sales experience plus your remote location. How did this then transition to you working completely for yourself?
Yeah, I have you heard of remote year, Nora?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
But
So
why don't you describe it?
Yeah, so I went on a remote year program in early 2018, and remote year basically coordinates the travel logistics for people who can already work remotely. So if you already work remotely and you want to have digital nomadism turnkey, they basically have an itinerary and say, hey, every single month we're going to go to a different place. All you do is pay us a monthly, I think at the time it was $2,000, and we'll take care of all the travel. We'll take care of your apartment. We'll take care of, community events. Some of the meals are included. Like there's a bunch of different things you get from that. And it's an amazing concept. And it was such a fantastic thing. I actually here in Playa live with a guy I met on that program. There's 20, 30 other people here from that program. So you end up having the big thing there is the community and having that community for the rest of your life. So I go on that program with the intention of, I want to work for this company. This is strategy number one that I'll give to the listeners on how to find a remote job is become a customer if you can. Get the perspective of being in their ecosystem, get the perspective on how they talk to their customers, the issues with the product, because you can always use that as leverage when looking to connect with their employees, when looking to get a job at the organization. The more you understand about them, the more easily you can find a way in, right? So I was just really outspoken in the community. I was doing, presentations for everybody. Everybody saw how hard I was working because I was freelancing and kind of starting my own coaching business and trying to figure things out. And by the end of that trip, the job came up as a salesperson for their company. And I didn't even have to submit a resume. 2 people had already done it for me that I had told, hey, I really want to work here. I really want this job. And they said, hey, pass me your resume. The job's going to be listed soon. We'll put you in the system. Kind of one goes to show how relationships are so important in jobs, but that was really my first time working for a very remote first company that was like, they had their shit down, like their policies, their culture, everything was remote. It's even in the name, obviously, but it was so much fun to also work with, 200 plus other people. A lot of them were, kind of in my age range within, plus or minus 10 years. And IBM, of course, was plus or minus 40 years. So it was just a fantastic time. And that's really what was the spark for people need a remote job, because I was selling the programs. And again, they're for people who already have remote work, but people would call us or set up calls, like sales calls, and they'd say, oh, so how do I get a job with remote year? They would think that we would be getting them the jobs. And after about 50% of my calls were telling people that, no, we don't give jobs, I was like, in my head, this is a huge need. People don't know how to find remote work.
And I'm assuming that this then transitioned you into becoming the remote job coach.
So that validated it. And it was like, okay, there's this need, right? And so I started to try to provide resources for the community. So for the remote year community and for people that would be calling in, it was mostly just like free stuff. Like, hey, here's the list of job boards. Here's the, try to get people started with things. And I was trying to push remote year, like, hey, like this is a really big thing that we could be a part of. Like, I'd love to head this up, try to have some of those conversations. And ultimately it got to this point where I had to make a decision. I couldn't continue to work full time in my job, which was very demanding, and then also go all in on coaching and, realize my dream. And sometimes you have those things that intuitively call you. And that's what was happening with me. And so I made that switch in August of 2019 after quite some time of kind of doing it on the side. And then once those roads diverged, I went all in on the remote job coach.
So that's pretty cool, because you were able to work in the industry on another way. You saw the need. And then, so it was almost like your entire time working for remote year was like market research to be 100%. Able to know. Wow.
It was all, and I still had all the connections at remote year, like in the sales team. So, I was never, there was a little bit of that. Oh, is there like a conflict of interest? So I was very careful about how I did that. And I just wanted to make sure that I was on the up and up with everything. So I had some really close friends on the sales team, and sometimes they would send me people and say, hey, like I talked to this person, they might be a good fit to chat with you for coaching or whatever. The way I saw it was, if they can't work remote, they can't go on remote year. So I would be essentially a great partner for them in that. And then 2020 hit, remote year went under for about a year, where they basically ceased operations. They ended up getting bought by Selena, and now they have programs again, which is really awesome that they're kind of kicking back up with those things. But yeah, at the time, that was a really big hit, and I realized, wow, it couldn't have been better timing for me to do what I did, because if I would have waited and 2020 came around, it would have been not too late, but I just had established myself more from starting to work in August. Going into 2020, I was already the remote job coach for a number of months, and a number of years before that, I'd been working on the market research and things like that.
Well, and I certainly believe that you're very well positioned going forward, because remote work is the new black. First of all, it was necessitated by a lot of companies. But then, on the other side of the pandemic, some of these companies are going to require their employees to go back at least part-time. And I personally have been speaking with a bunch of people who are saying, I don't want to do that. Yep. So that's where you can certainly come in handy, I suspect. But why don't you tell me, who do you work with and what do you do with them?
Yeah, no, I mean, your suspicions are right on point. One of the things I'm getting the most right now are people that are being called back to the office. The way that I frame my marketing materials and try to describe who I work with is high performers. So I want to be working with people who, in their jobs, they have been called upon by their management, by their coworkers, and they answer the call every time. These are people who do well, they have certifications, or they have credentials in their field, in their niche. And those are the people I usually work with personally on a coaching basis. But I also, for people who are maybe a little bit earlier in their journey, don't have as much remote experience, or maybe aren't as confident with their skills right now, I do have some, self-paced courses and materials for people like there. So I try to offer things for people all over the spectrum of their remote journey. But I find that the people that I work with the best, that from a coaching perspective, from like one-on-one type stuff or group coaching, which I also do, is, high performing individuals who've done really well in their job, but for whatever reason, they're just not sure how to find that next challenge that's remote. And these are people some of the times that are already working remotely, but they either have lost love for that role, they don't like their manager, they're in a situation where it's remote for now, or it's just like, hey, we are now remote, but this company really doesn't know what they're doing, and things are kind of falling apart around me. So yeah, I work with a range of people.
Now, of course, I don't want you to give away all your trade secrets, but is there maybe one question that you find yourself answering more than any other that your clients bring to you?
Well, first of all, I'm happy to give away as many trade secrets as you asked me. This will be exclusive. Yeah, the question that I get the most, I get a lot of, I'm surprised at some of the level of the questions I get, because I have so much content material out there that answers pretty much any question you could have. But I just get like, how do you find a remote job? Like every day. It's like, have you looked at the link in my bio?
I get that all the time, by the way. People like, I want to travel full time and work remotely. How do I do that? I'm like, I don't even know how to begin answering that question.
Well, and here's the thinking on that is like, if you're not able to navigate my free resources, my website, the link in my bio, but you could send me this message, then there's maybe a skill missing there that might prevent you from being able to work remote. Literally, if you don't have that proactive ability to go and find resources for yourself, you might have difficulty. On that question, I think what people do wrong, and I was explaining this on a live earlier today with the Running Remote conference. You know them. Finding a remote job is not just about going and applying for jobs. Like, that is the least leverage thing you can do, is just going and applying to a job. But that's what everybody does. It's like, oh, you need a job, go apply. It's like, no, hold on a second. Let's start with your mindset. Where's your head at? like let's do a real assessment of one, where are your skills at? Where's your head at? Do you actually believe you can do this? Do you have the skills required? Do you feel like you're so doubtful and discouraged from all the rejection that every single time that you go to job search, you hate your life? If that's the energy that you take into a job search, people will feel that. You'll come across as desperate. You'll come across as annoying. You'll come across as all the things that you don't want to be. So like anything that you should do is spend 80% of the time upfront on sharpening the axe, like doing the things that will set you up foundationally with a good strategy to actually conduct a good search. And that's not applying. A strategic thing you could do is, I don't know, figure out what it is you want out of a job. A lot of people don't even take the time to do that. They just go to the job boards and they go look at what's available. They're like, give me whatever you have. And it's like, let's reimagine this. There's new roles every single year that didn't exist the year before. So if we start to understand, what are my interests? What are the things I'm good at? Where is it that I can provide some value? What industries have I worked in before? What's the lowest hanging fruit of all those things? And let's put together a strategy where, if I look at my remote lifestyle needs and what I want, because as you know, living here in Mexico would be very different than living in Arkansas in the middle of the US and working from home. It'd be a very different need as far as what you're going to search for. If I know that first and foremost, then I can go into my search only prioritizing and targeting companies that would allow that sort of thing. Right?
Yep.
So I need to know what I want first before I even start applying to jobs, instead of the reactive approach of going to job boards and applying. So that's one of the first things that I think most people do wrong.
I'm curious about your point of then, once you figured out what you want to do and where and how, then you specifically suss out the companies that are able to accommodate those needs and desires. How would you find those companies specifically? Do you still go through the job boards, or do you suggest circumventing job boards and employing another strategy?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways of doing that. I think looking at jobs at the beginning is a good thing, but it's not to apply. You're looking at jobs to find companies and to find different words. Like, I have a whole keyword research exercise that we do early on that does require looking at job boards and filtering down and trying to find very targeted roles. But what we're doing is we're getting data on what these companies are using as far as those keywords, so that we can frame your LinkedIn and your resume as, someone who would be valuable to those types of organizations for those types of roles. You can use some of those job listings for market research, but that's not what most people are doing. They're going to those jobs to go apply. And that's the distinction that I would make. Outside of that, if you're on LinkedIn and say that you know a company that you want to work for, if you look on the right side, there's people also viewed, and you click on that and there's like 20 companies that are very similar to that company. So if you know the industry, if you know one company, you might know 20. That's just one tip right there. Another way you can do it is look inside your current network. Who is working and who's living the lifestyle you want to live in a similar type of role or a similar type of company. Use their company as a reference point to find other ones. You can search online. Like, there's just so many different ways to do it. So I think people get very boxed in, and their thinking is very inside of these imaginary lines that have been created by our society time over time, of like how you get a job, like this is what you do, and it's all BS. And it's like networking, finding relationships, adding value, proving that you can actually do it, establishing trust. These are things that people aren't talking about when it comes to a job search, but it's the reason that people actually get jobs.
And, that applies to all jobs everywhere. I think that is, like you say, possibly in the times of old, as in pre-remote work being a thing. I think people could use that traditional kind of job search classified method to find jobs. But I think the people who really would excel in their careers would do the things that you're talking about: networking, targeting, really understanding what you can offer and to whom. But I feel like now that remote work is as prevalent as it is, that all of those skills are even more important. It's like what you said earlier. If someone on your site sends you a message asking you to give you all the answers, but they haven't taken the time to actually do a little bit of that research, that's an indication right there that maybe they don't have some of the skills required of being a remote worker, because indeed it is all you, and you have to be able to work in an online environment in all senses of the word.
How you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're showing me who you are, if you're showing me who you are through that message, I mean, obviously, like, I want to cut people some slack sometimes, but if you're so off the mark with that first message to me, it's like, I don't know how I can help you. Like, like there's literally a link in the bio that says, here are all the resources you need to work remotely. And if you haven't even clicked on that and looked at those things, if someone's coming to me and saying, hey, I looked through and I saw these, this and that resource, and I was just wondering, how can I use this particular resource to do that? Or, just at least show me a little bit of digging. If you're looking for, a couple minutes of my time, prove to me that you spent a couple minutes yourself trying to get it.
I do a lot of consulting myself, except I'm more on the lifestyle design and long-term travel side of things. But I have a lot of people coming to me who are searching for a remote career or a remote job. So expect some new clients. I can definitely send them your way because
that.
I think these are fabulous skills, and they're going to be all the more important going forward. I'm curious, for you in developing this business, have there been any challenges for you along the way?
Oh man. Yeah. That's just life, right?
Sure.
I think some of the challenges especially of recent, have been changing my model, trying to figure out how, I've been doing the coaching thing for a number of years now. And I first started, like most coaches, doing one-on-one coaching. And that's a great way to get a lot of data about how to deliver your transformation. But then over time, it's not scalable. So then I moved to group coaching, and that's been great. But then I've also been like, okay, well, if I'm coaching, 3 to 5 people in a month on this group, am I really helping out as many people as I can? And where am I missing opportunity to give people what they need at those lower levels of experience? Reach out to people who don't know who I am yet and give them a more affordable way, because my coaching programs are a few $1,000s. On that lower end, how do I provide something for someone who's been unemployed for 6 months and is collecting government assistance and is trying to pay their mortgage and has kids but needs the help? And I ran into a lot of different situations where I'd be on calls with people like that, and it's like, this person's not in a position to pay $4,000 for coaching. So how can I provide something that gives them the flexibility? And I recently launched the Remote Job Club. So it's actually a subscription based model where people pay a monthly fee. And I almost, it's the peril of doing business as a career coach, is you're working with people pretty much to not work with you anymore.
Yes, exactly. A job well done is if they don't need you.
Yeah. So then I've also looked at how do I add additional value at the end of those relationships. And what I've come to is also providing co-working services, where we have subscription-based co-working where people can come in and join us for that too. And that's I'm launching that within the next few weeks to month with a partner of mine as well. So that's something that I include in my coaching programs, and then wanting to have someone else to help me with that, kind of build that as an actual service. So I think the biggest challenges at this stage are much different than my challenges at the beginning. At the beginning, it was like product market fit. Like, how do I speak to these people? How do I find them? How do I get clients? And a lot of coaches go through that. But I had so much work that I did through Remote Year in collecting that data that I got my first 2 clients within like 2 weeks. And then I had a dry spell of like a month, and then, very inconsistent stuff. So I'm trying to create more consistency in my business. I'm trying to create a lot of passive revenue streams, which is something that I know that you do as well.
I want to transition over to how this has been while traveling full time, because you've now been the remote job coach. And I think for the last 3 years, or for 3 years, you were nomadic. And then you ended up coming to getting a home base in Mexico. So can you walk me through what it was like to make that transition to full-time travel, and then what inspired you to come off the road?
Yeah. So early 2018 in March, I left for Lisbon, Portugal on that Remote Year trip. As I mentioned before, existential crisis, left my ex-girlfriend left Portland, Oregon, which I was living in at the time for 3 years. Had a great community there, but I was just like, there's something more. It's calling me. What is this? And I don't know, as travelers, I think we have that thing that just, it's more uncomfortable. It was more uncomfortable at the time for me to stay in the United States than it was to go. Like, people were like, oh, you're so brave to go do this. It's like, no, you're brave for staying there. Like, I think you're braver than me. So it was just finally following that intuition and running as fast as I could. And I enjoyed every single second of it. And that transition was was crazy because I was at that point in my life in 2018 and 19 where moving every month was normal for me. The most I stayed in any one place was I stayed in Colombia for 2 months, and I stayed in Mexico City for 2 months. At any one time, that was the longest I had stayed in any place for 2 years. And it was, 15 countries, usually a month at a time. So that was kind of wild. It was just all over the place. And eventually you get to that point where I'm sure you get, a little exhaustion from travel, but I also met my partner here, and she is Mexican, and she's lived in Playa for the past 5 years. And this was a place where I was already considering, where in Mexico do I want to live? I love Mexican culture. I love the Spanish language. I love that it's the same time zone. You can very easily get back to the US if you have to. So it just kind of lined up. And then Playa itself as a city has everything I need. And it's walkable, which a lot of cities can't really claim that they're walkable from one end to the other. You can walk everywhere here. They're great community, great cost of living, quality of living, and food, and all those things. So all that lined up. And then I had that come to Jesus moment where I actually met my partner here, and I was here for 10 days. And I saw her for 9 out of the 10 days. And at the end, it was like, hey, I'm leaving for Spain because I was going on the Nomad cruise for the next 2 weeks. We were like, what is this? And I was just like, hey, I'm going to come back here. And I went off to the Nomad cruise. I ended up basically knowing that I was going to be offline for 2 weeks, wasn't going to have any internet. So right before that, I bought her a ticket to California, and I was like, I'm going to be in California in December, hanging out with my family. I want you to come meet them. It was a crazy thing to do in retrospect, but I think it kind of solidified our relationship. And then it solidified my desire to come back and live and create a community here in Playa, which was one of the better decisions I think that I've made in my life.
Wow, fantastic. And you know what? It's funny. There's so many people who do end up, they may not even be remote workers, but I was recently reading a study about expats and the reason why expats become expats, and love is the top one. They move abroad for somebody. So it's definitely, and what a beautiful story too, to have met her and known your come to Jesus moment, as you say. I like that. You were talking about those first 2 years with remote year, moving every month. Now, one of the things that I often say to people who are aspiring towards a long-term travel lifestyle is that traveling slowly is immensely important. And a lot of people at the onset of the lifestyle will feel like spending a month in a place is plenty. And one of the things that I say is that the tasks of travel are practically a job unto themselves. When you're traveling with remote year, those logistics are taken care of for you. So I would imagine that a month in a location would be a little more sustainable in the long run, but yet still you found that at the end of 2 years, you were pretty burnt out. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the remote year program that I did was actually only 4 months. So they have 4 month, 6 month, 12-month programs. Plus they added like week-long retreats and stuff. They have a whole bunch of different products now. But I was on the first 4-month program that they ever offered. So it was kind of an experiment for them. But just like you said, getting rid of a lot of the logistical challenges, like deciding where you're going to go, deciding what neighborhood you're going to live in, what the accommodation is going to be like, where you're going to go to co-work, all of that's taken care of, the flight, everything. And on top of that, one of the reasons you usually stay in a place for a long enough time is so that you can meet people, right? Like that's a pretty big deal, is like creating a little community while you're there. And you really hard to do that in a month. But if you're traveling with a community for 4 months and they're going to be with you every single place, that's a little bit different. So I found that remote year provided a lot of that really essential travel learning that I needed at the beginning. And like I call it, it's turnkey digital nomadism. It really is. It just helped so much to have that. And then after my 4-month program, I actually went to Mexico City for 2 months to do training, because remote year had a little like hub there where they would do training. And it was awesome because I was in Mexico City training with these new people. And then after that, I started kind of traveling by myself. And then I went on another program too. And then as an employee, I could go on programs for half off. So I was paying $1,000 a month and I was getting all those benefits. It was pretty good deal at the time. And then I was popping in and out of those months. But later on, I realized, like you said, really at minimum 3 months, I think is a good timeline, like a whole quarter in a place, quarter year. But at this point, I've been in Mexico for over a year and a half, in this part of Mexico. So it's been really great to have that consistency.
Has your productivity changed or the way your work changed, having this base versus being nomadic?
Well, yeah, let me show you the difference here, because this makes a big difference.
There we are. Ergonomics. It's so important. Yeah.
Having all of your stuff set up, every day. Just, I don't go to co-working spaces. I'm not productive in co-working spaces. I'm not productive in cafes. So I don't even touch those places at all. I used to. And then looking back and reflecting is like, I was so unproductive. Every time I get to a coffee shop, I'd order a bunch of food, and it was like this weird thing. You'd start to get set up, but you order all this food, and then they come bring the food, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna put my laptop away and eat. So then I would eat, and then I take my laptop out. I was like, I'm tired. I just ate. and then I'd go back to my house and I'd go take a nap. And then I'd be like, all right, am I gonna start working now? So for me, I can totally dig how some people can be great at cafes, and it's just too noisy for me. I have a lot of calls usually. So this is just my zone right here. And I am locked in. Like, I seriously locked in, and co-working is a big part of that too. I think having a partner in crime that you can co-work with, or having a few partners in crime that you can co-work with. That's why I'm creating this co-working club, is so important, because you have that accountability to, like, wherever you're sitting, wherever you're at, you can't lie. I mean, you could lie to everybody, I guess, but you're gonna feel bad.
I mean, as long as you're sitting online pretending to work, you may as well actually just get some work done.
Yeah, it's so much more effort to pretend. Like you
actually,
will be expending much more energy pretending.
That, you know what, it's funny you should mention that. So back in the day, many lifetimes ago, when I was working in an office in the cubicle environment, and I was really expedient at what I did, such that my work for the day would often be done by around midday. And I'd had previous jobs where if I finished my daily tasks early, that was okay. I could read a book, or I could, as long as I was there to, take calls or deal with whatever needed to be done, I could occupy my time however I wanted. But in this particular job, I had to pretend to be busy.
Yeah.
And that was more soul destroying than being busy. Like I wished for more work, because pretending to be busy was terrible. I mean, I guess it was a blessing in disguise, because ultimately that was the inspiration for me to become self-employed, because I thought, well, if I want to work for myself, and that way, if my work is done for the day, then I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. That's so similar.
That your work is never done for the day, right?
It's not when you're, when you're on your own, or even when you have a small team. I've got three people on my team, but it's like, I've had a week this week where I've struck some inspiration, and I've had a lot of projects that I just have kind of more deadline orientated tasks. And I've been starting super early, and I've not been ending until 10 p.m. at night. But I've been on fire the whole time, like feeling good about it, and taking a couple breaks to maybe take a 15-minute nap, or go eat, stuff like that. But with the rain the way it was, I was like, oh, this is nice. Like, very ominous background, and kind of like rainy, but I liked it, because when the sun's out like this, it's like, I want to be out there.
Well, and this is one of the freedoms of being an entrepreneur is, you're going to put the hours in one way or another, but you do have that flexibility, at least some of the time, to be able to choose those hours and how you work. And that can apply to circadian rhythms. Some people work at night better than they do in the mornings, and vice versa. So that
what
definitely.
Are you like a early or late shift kind of person?
I'm an early shift sort of person, although admittedly it has changed many times over my life. So it depends, I think, to an extent, it depends on my location. But generally speaking, all of my life have been a work first, play later sort of person. So I'll get up, I'll do my morning routine, I'll sit down to my work, and I'll get through the tasks that I've designated for the day. And then I can go out and play.
Yeah, it's interesting, the different weight that morning routines and some of these things have had in different parts of my life. And then, like, right now, I had surgery a month ago, and it like prevented me from working out for about 3 weeks. And I just used that as an excuse to disregard any of my other routines too, like my meditation and like my journaling. It's like everything went to the wayside, and I was like, my monkey brain was like, oh, well, just justify just working. So I'd wake up at like 6 and start working right at 6. And I've just never done that before, but I was getting a lot of stuff done and enjoying it. But now I'm like, all right, well, I need to go back into my other routine where I'm working out in the mornings and doing all this other stuff. So it's funny how that changes as like a remote worker, as someone who's, whether you're traveling or whether you're in one spot, it's like, depending on what's going on in your life, you may, really drastically change those routines, and the importance of those things might change too.
And I think two things are important about that. One of which is it is important to be able to take stock regularly and take a look at your routine and ask whether it still serves you. Like for you, for example, seeing how productive you are at 6 a.m. might change your routine to get up and work and then work out. And you have that freedom to be able to do that. But the other thing too is when you throw in the travel component, travel inherently is going to mess with your routine and requires a certain amount of adaptability and flexibility. So that leads to my final question, which is, if there is someone who is working remotely or hoping to work remotely and traveling long term, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, first ask yourself why this is important to you. If it all goes, for me, it all goes back to mindset first. It's always like, let's look at the why behind this. Let's look at what's really driving this, because people burn out very easily on their job search if they get discouraged. And I don't want to tell you to expect discouragement, but I want to prepare you for the worst, just in case it does happen. And what I think the saying is like, prepare for the worst, expect the best. So expect that you're going to be successful, have a successful mindset, but just prepare for things not going the way that you think that they're going to go. And start to look at companies that support what it is that you're trying to do. So if you're trying to travel the world like a digital nomad, there's a small subset of companies, about 5% of the companies that are out there that do remote work are able to hire people that can work anywhere in the world. So it's a small subset. So you can find lists of all the companies and just realize that usually getting a job with one of those types of companies is going to be a lot more competitive than maybe a job if you were just working from home in the US. Because there's a lot of tax restrictions, a lot of legal things that those companies have to go through. So understand what it is you want, what that travel looks like, find the companies that would support that life of travel. And then my recommendation is start putting yourself in the ecosystem of those organizations. Find ways to join communities that are aligned with those companies. Find ways to get on their email lists. It's a super simple, small thing that people don't even think about it. But if you have a company that does distributed remote work, hires people from all over the world, you're interested, get on their email list, see what it is they're sending out. If you can be on the cutting edge of what they're doing in their company and understanding that, you can even create a filter in your Gmail so that it just goes to this other folder, and all the newsletters from those companies go in there, so that you're not destroying your inbox. But like, start to get connected with people at those companies. Start on some of the lower levels. Start with people that are maybe either at your level or just below where you would be working, so that it's very low risk conversations, but start to provide value, right? Look for people in those companies that create content. Start engaging with that content. The one reason people post content is so other people comment or like that content. That's why we do it. Is so if you can pump up some people's egos who work at that company, who are posting content, and there's a way to do that in LinkedIn to actually filter and see who is posting content at this company. You can very easily start to insert yourself into the psychological familiarity of people at these companies.
I can tell, even just from what you said, there's all these little threads, these little nuggets of wisdom that I know you offer in your programs as the remote job coach. So you've definitely got the chops to make that happen. Where can people find you?
The remotejobcoach.com can get you to everything that I do. So that would be the number one place.
Excellent. And do you have any final words for us?
I appreciate you as a professional hobo, having me on here. That's amazing. And I was so glad that we both thought of each other from the summit. So that's been great. I guess my last parting words are going to go back to just the belief, right? If you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. So absolutely. Again, everything starts with belief. And in this world where things are constantly changing, innovating, going towards this remote, amazing world where people can live all over everywhere, you can find your little niche, you can find your little place. So it starts with the belief that you can.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Nora. Appreciate it.
I'm Nora Dunn, and I'm otherwise known as the Professional Hobo, and I will see you next time. Are you ready?